A 29-year-old man named Edward Snowden leaked documents revealing espionage and surveillance operations carried out by the United States National Security Agency. Snowden wasn't an outsider. He worked for this agency. He was one of them, making him a reliable source. The documents he leaked exposed a dangerous secret about security and digital espionage. What we are going to discuss today is one of the most dangerous topics. This video is not about conspiracy theories, but about real and proven facts. The devices we hold in our hands help these people spy on us through them without our knowledge, using our cameras and microphones. Snowden's leaks revealed that the U.S. National Security Agency has the capability to monitor all of the internet. Everything you write or upload online is stored. Every word, every image, every video, even things in your email or private conversations. Once again, we're not talking about conspiracy theories. These are real and proven facts. And this is what we're going to explore in today's story. On the 1st of December 2012, this man, Glenn Greenwald, received an anonymous email. But before we talk about what was in that email, let's first get to know who Glenn Greenwald is. He is a well-known American journalist who used to write articles for the British newspaper The Guardian, one of the most famous and oldest in the world. Greenwald was known for his defense of freedom. He always supported free journalism and also defended WikiLeaks. As mentioned earlier, Glenn Greenwald received an email from an unknown person on December 1st, 2012. This person claimed to work for the CIA and NSA and stated that he had sensitive information he wanted to share with him. At first, Greenwald was very interested, but after starting to exchange emails with that unknown person, the latter forced him to go through many complicated security procedures. The aim was to protect their conversations through encryption. It was clear that this guy was a technical expert, but Greenwald started to get tired of those complicated procedures. He felt that the guy was exaggerating and just wasting his time. He even suspected that he might be trying to trap him, so he stopped communicating with him. A month later, in January 2013, this woman named Laura also received an anonymous email. Laura was an American documentary director and producer. Her name was on the list of U.S. security agencies because she produced many films about the U.S. invasion of Iraq, the Guantanamo prison, and many other things that exposed the U.S. government. Laura used to be detained and interrogated constantly, even though she was a journalist and the U.S. Constitution guarantees freedom of expression. Every time she wanted to enter the United States, they would detain her, search her, and cause her many problems and obstacles. Laura and Greenwald were friends. In fact, they had a strong relationship because they had many things in common. Both were journalists, both called for freedom, and both opposed the practices of the U.S. government. So the anonymous person who was contacting Greenwald when he stopped responding apparently tried to contact Laura. Citizen 4 was the name used by the anonymous person and is also the name of the documentary that Laura later released. The message sent by the anonymous person contained a method for encrypting communication between them, making it difficult to trace. This means that Citizen 4 assumed they were being watched. After establishing a communication method, they began an encrypted conversation. The anonymous person tried to make Laura believe that she was indeed being watched and that she needed to be careful with everything and everyone around her. They stayed in contact for a long time and exchanged several messages between them. In short, this person had been telling Laura that the NSA was monitoring almost everything. He told her that after the September 11th attacks, the NSA and CIA had expanded and alarmingly increased their surveillance and espionage programs, and they began intercepting and storing the data of most intelligence passing through either the telecommunications network or the internet. This man talked about pieces of information and data that are intercepted, stored, and kept in huge databases. And this was not limited to hostile or foreign countries. Even the communications and data of Americans were being monitored. He also stated that telecommunications and technology companies were exploiting their customers' trust and privacy to unimaginable levels. The communication between Laura and the anonymous person lasted several months. After giving Laura an overview of the evidence and documents he had, they decided to meet in April 2013. They agreed that the meeting would take place in Hong Kong in the lobby of a hotel called the Mira. This was the hotel where the anonymous person had been staying. Of course, the meeting had to take place outside of America, in a neutral place. So the anonymous person chose Hong Kong. Then he asked Laura to tell Greenwald about the meeting. He knew they were friends and said he had tried to contact him first, but Greenwald had cut off contact with him for some reason. He asked her to go see Greenwald and see if there was any chance he could accompany her to the meeting. Indeed, Laura went to see Greenwald and told him everything about this guy. She managed to convince him that the anonymous person wouldn't waste his time. On the contrary, everything she had heard from him proved that the matter was much bigger than anything they were working on. Greenwald and Laura took a plane and headed to Hong Kong for a face-to-face meeting with the anonymous person. The latter told Laura that he would carry a Rubik's Cube so she could recognize him, and they had also agreed on a passcode beforehand to confirm each other's identity. The code was that she was supposed to ask him when the restaurant would open, and he would reply, "I don't know, ask at reception." Greenwald and Laura went to the hotel and waited for him in the lobby. They thought the man they were about to meet would be an older person, perhaps in his 40s or 50s. They assumed the man who had the power to access America's most secure systems would be older and more experienced. But they were surprised when they met a 29-year-old man. Greenwald and Laura went up with him to his room, where they got to know him. His name was Edward Snowden, the man who would reveal the secrets of the most extensive and dangerous surveillance operation of the 21st century. Before we dive into the details, let's first learn about Snowden's story and how he got there. Snowden was born on June 21, 1983, into a family with a long military history. His grandfather was an admiral in the Army, and his father worked in the Coast Guard for 30 years of his life. Unfortunately, his family began to fall apart due to disputes between his parents, which eventually led to their separation. This caused Snowden to lose interest in his studies despite being a very intelligent child due to these family circumstances. The Snowden family moved, and due to the move, Snowden was absent from school for 9 months. Instead of returning to school, he took the GED exam, which is the exam students take after graduating from high school. Despite not completing his formal education, he excelled in the exam, which means he didn't even have a high school diploma. Snowden discovered his love and passion for technology and programming, so he began taking computer science courses and learning and developing his skills on his own. In this way, he reached a high level in the field, purely through self-learning, without obtaining any academic diploma. It's important to note that Snowden still had no diploma at this point. Years passed, and Snowden turned 22. Despite his intelligence and all the skills he had acquired in computer science and technology, he couldn't find a job because he didn't have a diploma. So he remained unemployed for a while until he decided to join the Army. In 2004, he decided to follow in the footsteps of his father and grandfather. However, his Army career didn't last long. A few months after joining, he suffered a leg fracture while getting out of bed. After this incident, he could no longer continue his military service, so he was discharged and found himself unemployed again for a period until 2005. In that year, Snowden got a job at the Advanced Language Studies Center of Maryland. He worked as a security guard, not as a teacher or employee, due to the fact that he had no diploma. Note that the center was supported by the NSA. At that time, the NSA was looking for people skilled in technology and wasn't interested in someone like Snowden, who had no diploma. However, after the 9/11 attacks, they expanded their surveillance and espionage programs, so they were looking for anyone with technical and programming skills who could help them. That's when Snowden managed to get a job at the CIA, and he surprised everyone by obtaining the highest scores in their tests, despite not even having a high school diploma. So they conducted additional interviews and tests and felt that this person had great potential and that if they trained him, he could become a very valuable asset. That's why they sent Snowden to one of their training centers, where even Snowden's instructors were surprised when they gave him tasks or training designed to be solved in a certain way. Snowden would surprise them by solving it in a different and more effective way, creating a new way of thinking that the instructors themselves hadn't expected or thought of. He would solve the problem in a measured amount of time. For example, if they gave him 8 hours to work on something, they would be surprised that he would solve it in less than an hour. So they quickly realized that this person was a genius who would do great things in this field. After a period of training, Snowden officially became a CIA employee and an expert in networks. In 2007, they sent him to Geneva, Switzerland. Geneva is a city known for housing the headquarters of the UN, the World Health Organization, human rights organizations, and many others, making it an important city on the international level. The CIA had a strong intelligence network in Geneva, so Snowden, as a network expert, was sent to this city to help secure the CIA's network. At this point in his life, Snowden considered himself a patriot who had a lot of love for his country. As I mentioned earlier, he was raised in a military family and believed that his country was the best in the world and that the people working in the military and intelligence sectors were the heroes who protected this great nation. Or at least that's what he used to believe at the time. But during his time working with the CIA in Geneva, he began to discover the dark side of the U.S. intelligence system. Snowden claims that there was a man who worked in the banking sector in Switzerland, a man who held a high position and had important information for the CIA. So CIA agents got him drunk and incited him to drive his car while intoxicated so that the police would arrest him while driving, which is a serious crime. And that's exactly what happened. The police arrested him for drunk driving. But the CIA offered to drop the charges in exchange for his cooperation as an informant. Eventually, the man agreed. This was one of the situations that made Snowden feel uneasy. He began to see the work of the intelligence agencies from its true side and realized that it was completely different from what he used to imagine. This was not a hero's job. There was direct cooperation between the NSA and the CIA. It's normal for two agencies like these to cooperate directly. So Snowden, who was a technology expert working with the CIA, sometimes received experts in technology from the NSA to exchange information during their work together on joint missions. Snowden began to discover the NSA's capabilities in surveillance and espionage. At that time, he was introduced for the first time to a program called PRISM, a program run by the NSA whose task is to collect data and information passing through the major U.S. tech companies like Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Apple, and all the other big and well-known tech companies, in addition to telecommunications companies like Verizon, AT&T, and many others. This program is designed to intercept and collect all the data passing through these companies, including emails, conversations, images, and videos. They have everything. We're not talking about a conspiracy theory. These are proven facts by Snowden's leaks. Snowden's leaks revealed that these major tech companies have secret contracts with the NSA and that the NSA pays them billions to monitor their servers all the time. They must remain silent and not say a word. Everyone should know that everything uploaded to the internet is actually stored and monitored. Even the most complex encryption system can be breached and hacked. Thanks to their program, they can access all messages, emails, and calls. Everyone should assume that they are being recorded and stored. The NSA keeps everything. The amount of data and information they collect is enormous. If they want to know something about a specific person, they can get it with a single click. They can get everything, even the things people think are hidden and private. But let's say they don't have a specific person in mind. They have a specific event in a specific area. For example, they want to know who hates the U.S. president in a city. This is where another program Snowden revealed comes into play. It's called X-Keyscore. This program is a search engine where you can type certain words and set some filters. You can type the name of the U.S. president and the word attack or explosion. You can define this search in a specific area, and the program will search their vast database and show you the results as if you were searching on Google. But the difference is that it searches people's private emails, messages, and calls. In this way, they can find people who are considered potential threats before carrying out any attack. Snowden had been working for the CIA for 2 years since 2007. Then he resigned in 2009. But he didn't stray far from the intelligence field. He then started working for the NSA. He didn't work with them as an official employee. He worked with them as a contractor through Dell. The NSA liked this arrangement. They prefer that employees working with them appear to work for other companies so they can work with the NSA in secret. Snowden worked with them as an engineer and systems administrator. He was one of the technicians granted all the powers you can imagine. He had access to all the surveillance systems and knew all their secrets. What Snowden saw at that time was truly insane. The NSA was monitoring the entire world, even allied countries. They were exploiting communication and internet networks worldwide. Snowden mentioned countries like Japan, Germany, Austria, Brazil, and Mexico. All these countries were considered U.S. allies, Yet they were spying on them at all levels. They were monitoring all their communications and networks. Not only that, but Snowden claimed that they had planted malicious software in these countries' networks. That is, they had planted it in the electrical grid, the water network, and the main services. This malicious software is currently deactivated. But if any of these countries were to change their stance towards the United States in the future, they would activate this malicious software with just the press of a button and destroy the entire infrastructure of the country. Keep in mind, we're talking about the allies of the United States, not enemies like China, Russia, or Iran. Snowden also said that one of his missions was to track world leaders in different countries, following their movements and private affairs, and trying to uncover their scandals so that the United States would have the upper hand in any negotiation. So don't be surprised when a leader of a country or a high-ranking official obeys the United States immediately. The United States uses malicious methods in their negotiations, like scandals. According to Snowden, the NSA has the power to hack laptops and phones, and they can remotely turn on cameras and microphones. Snowden himself always covers the cameras on any device he uses, laptops and phones, because he knows these cameras can be hacked and turned on remotely. He did it himself when he worked with them. He used to monitor people and admitted it himself. Snowden saw insane things during his work with the NSA. He tried to convince himself that the system would fix itself and that all these things that were happening, the mistakes, would be addressed and fixed by senior people. That's what he thought. But nothing was fixed. Even Obama, who was the president of the United States at the time, broke all his promises regarding this issue. He said in his campaign that he would stop all intelligence and security violations of citizens' privacy, but nothing changed. The spying and surveillance operations continued. Snowden began to feel confused, sensing that he had to do something about it, especially after realizing that most of these spying operations were directed at American citizens themselves. The NSA used to collect data from its citizens more than from any other country. Snowden began to see exposing what was happening as a national duty. One of the things that drove him to make a decision was the Congress meeting with General Keith Alexander, who at the time was the director of the NSA. In 2012, Congress invited General Keith Alexander, the director of the NSA, to attend a meeting and explain some of the things the American people were concerned about. Does the NSA routinely intercept the emails of American citizens? No. Does the NSA intercept phone conversations of Americans? No. Google searches? No. Text messages? No. Amazon.com orders? No. Bank records? No. All his answers were no, no, no. The director of the NSA is lying to Congress, which is the legislative authority in the country. So Snowden felt that things were getting more and more serious. If the NSA is willing to lie to Congress, then what's left? Snowden decided that it was a national duty and decided to reveal the secrets and expose the NSA. He then gradually began to collect files and documents and smuggle them out of the NSA building on small flash drives. Of course, most of the employees who work at the NSA are prohibited from carrying flash drives with them or any storage equipment outside the building, and they are always searched upon entering and exiting. But Snowden, being a technical person and a systems administrator, had specific privileges, one of which was that he could carry storage devices and flash drives outside the building. So he kept collecting these important files for some time, and then, in early 2013, he began to contact journalists. As we said at the beginning of the video, imagine that Snowden didn't tell anyone what he was planning to do. He didn't tell his father, his family, not even his girlfriend. He didn't tell anyone at all so they wouldn't get involved. Now, let's go back to what happened in Hong Kong. After Snowden met with journalist Greenwald and the documentary director Laura in the hotel, they went up to the room where Snowden was staying, and the first thing they did was start getting to know him. Where are you from? Where did you work? What are your proofs? What kind of documents do you have? Of course, Laura, the documentary director, filmed all the meetings, and you can watch her documentary Citizen 4 if you want all the details. This meeting was long. It lasted 8 days. So here are the most important things that happened during those 8 days spent in the hotel room. At the beginning, Snowden introduced himself and explained that his goal with the leak was to reveal all the spying and surveillance that the NSA was carrying out on people, especially on American citizens. Americans need to know that their government is spying on them and that all their privacy is erased and all their data is stored. Secondly, Snowden told them that he doesn't want them to protect his identity. He doesn't want to be considered an anonymous source. No, he wants these leaks to be in his name. The goal wasn't fame, but to protect his family and colleagues. He even said that after taking the files, he left digital traces that revealed his identity. So once the NSA starts investigating, they will know his identity. They will know that he is the one who leaked the files. Snowden told the journalists that he wanted all the blame to fall on him because in the end, he was the one who leaked the files and was ready to take responsibility and face the consequences. But at the same time, Snowden said he didn't want the focus to be on him. He wanted the focus to be on the files. The story is about these files that confirm the existence of a complete spying operation on the entire world's population. In addition to Greenwald and Laura, another journalist from The Guardian, the same newspaper Greenwald worked for, joined the meeting. Snowden opened the files he had inserted, showing them and explaining many of the things we've mentioned, including the PRISM program, the X-Keyscore program, and the special NSA search engines. He explained many things in detail, and one of the terrifying things Snowden talked about, for example, was that the NSA has 20 devices called Tom Lots. Each device can monitor 1 billion calls and internet sessions simultaneously, and each device can collect data at 125 gigabytes per second. And since there are 20 of these devices, it means they can monitor 20 billion calls and internet sessions simultaneously and can collect data at 2.5 TB per second. All these statistics go back to 2011. Snowden said these devices are updated every year, and this was about 13 years ago. So imagine the updated versions of those devices they have today. The journalists seemed stunned as they listened to Snowden. They couldn't believe what they were hearing. Snowden used to tell them that this wasn't science fiction. It was real and happening now, and these technologies were developing rapidly. He told them that all the information he had and was showing them was already considered old. Snowden told the journalists that he didn't want to be responsible for publishing these documents. He would provide them with the documents, and it was up to them to determine what was appropriate to publish and what wasn't. As mentioned earlier, Snowden and the journalists spent 8 days in that hotel. During these days, the first journalistic report was published. They didn't want to release all the leaked documents at once, so the first report they published was about Verizon, the well-known American telecommunications company. The report shows how this company cooperates with the NSA and allows them to collect all the call records of their customers. The report that came after that was more powerful. It talked about a program called PRISM, the program used by the NSA to cooperate with the largest U.S. tech companies, Google, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, and others. The report explained that the NSA has the right to access all the information that is on these companies' central servers. Of course, this news spread like wildfire. During their stay at the hotel, the journalists filmed a video of Snowden. In this video, he talked about his work at the NSA and the leaked documents he had. This was the first video that revealed Snowden's identity to the world, and of course, the video spread everywhere. The U.S. government couldn't deny the matter or claim that Snowden was lying, but they tried to show that the whole issue was less important and that Snowden was exaggerating. They also claimed that all the processes used to collect this data were encrypted and that no one could access them unless there was a specific target, and there must be a court order for these processes. They tried to make people believe that everything Snowden revealed was legal. The U.S. government tried to cover up the matter and at the same time began to focus more on Snowden to distract people from the content of the leaks and documents. So they labeled Snowden as a traitor and a spy and wanted him prosecuted under the Federal Espionage Act. This law is dedicated to people considered high-level traitors who leaked state secrets during the war. Imagine that this law has only been used 9 times in the last 100 years, and one of those 9 was with Snowden. The strange thing is that this law was supposed to be for wartime, but Snowden was considered a special case. Although what Snowden did was supposed to be a scandal, it wasn't espionage. Despite that, the American community was divided into 2 groups. Many Americans, especially politicians, considered Snowden a traitor, while others considered him a hero. Anyway, Snowden became a wanted man. After appearing in the video, he became known worldwide. Snowden was nervous at that time, but was ready for anything. He knew there was a high probability that he would be arrested. What happened next was that a human rights lawyer arrived at the hotel and helped Snowden contact the United Nations. Snowden managed to apply for asylum through the United Nations. During this period, Snowden disappeared. The lawyer who helped him took him to a small community living in poor neighborhoods in Hong Kong, and these people hid him. The lawyer told Snowden that these people were poor and had no citizenship and were also waiting for asylum through the United Nations. And the lawyer himself was working on their cases, so he had nothing to worry about. During this period, the U.S. was asking Hong Kong to extradite Snowden, but Hong Kong didn't respond immediately. They were a bit hesitant. Therefore, Snowden could move freely. The Hong Kong authorities were not following him. But of course, CIA agents were already looking for him, so he had to stay vigilant. Anyway, Snowden managed to contact people who worked with WikiLeaks, who helped him get political asylum in Ecuador. The plan was for Snowden to take the plane and leave Hong Kong for Russia, then from Russia to Cuba, and then from Cuba to Ecuador. There were no direct flights. But during this trip, when he arrived in Russia, the U.S. government canceled his passport. And here, Snowden found himself trapped at the Moscow airport. The airport officials didn't allow him to board the plane because his passport was canceled. But at the same time, Russia rejected the U.S. authorities' request to arrest Snowden due to the unstable political relations between the two countries. Imagine Snowden staying in the airport hotel for 40 days. They didn't know exactly what to do with him. But eventually, Russia decided to grant him temporary political asylum for only 1 year. The consequences of Snowden's leaks were enormous. Negotiations at government and corporate levels, parliamentary sessions in different countries worldwide, security conferences, statements, and many investigations. Snowden's asylum was renewed, and he still lives in Russia to this day. In fact, not long ago, in September last year, 2022, Putin, the Russian president, signed a decision to grant Snowden Russian citizenship, which he had been waiting for since 2020 due to his wife's pregnancy. Snowden's girlfriend, who was in the U.S. when he left, came to Russia, got married, and was expecting a child. That's why Snowden applied for citizenship, which was granted to him in 2022. Now that he has become a Russian citizen, he is no longer in danger of being extradited to the U.S. Even if relations between Russia and the U.S. improve, Russia will not extradite a Russian citizen to the U.S. The U.S. government is still requesting Snowden's extradition so that he can be tried on the charges against him. Snowden says he's fine with returning, but with one condition, that his trial be public. Of course, this condition is impossible to accept because it would cause more problems. Many people, especially politicians in America, accuse Snowden of treason and espionage, especially after he went to Russia. Snowden's response has always been that he didn't go to Russia, but to Ecuador, but the U.S. government canceled his passport in the middle of the trip, so he ended up in Russia. Snowden has always defended himself, saying he left a comfortable life behind with an annual income of over $200,000. So why would he betray his country? All he wanted to do was show U.S. citizens the reality of their government, their intelligence agencies, and the things happening behind the scenes so they could decide if that's the government they want or not. Snowden now earns a living through his media work, attending meetings, giving lectures, and participating in documentaries. He also published a book in 2019 called Permanent Record, which was a diary of his own life. He documented all the events that happened to him, and millions of copies were sold. But imagine that the U.S. government sued Snowden and the publisher to confiscate the book's profits. Constitutionally, they don't have the right to prevent him from publishing the book because the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution guarantees freedom of speech. They are attacking the book in terms of profits and income. The main issue is that Snowden didn't obtain permission from the federal government to publish the book, which means that legally any former employee of intelligence agencies must seek permission before publishing any book. Since Snowden didn't request it, the government has the right to confiscate the book's profits. Imagine they issued around $5 million. Despite all this, Snowden lives comfortably in Russia. Of course, he would prefer to be in his country with his family, but at least his wife and child are with him. Many people worldwide, both in the US and other countries, consider him a hero and believe that what he did was a great act. Not everyone can take the step he took, leaving his life and everything behind and not going against his principles. Nowadays, Snowden has 5.8 million followers on Twitter, but the funny thing is that he only follows one account, the NSA's account. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Goodbye.